I call the Honourable Member Julianne Genter.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to rise and speak on the third reading of the Hutt City Council Graffiti Removal Bill. I wasn't the Green Party member who was lucky enough to follow this bill through the Select Committee process and the House. That was my colleague Holly Walker, who previously noted and congratulated the Hutt City Council for its efforts to swiftly deal with vandalism, but also, and this is important, to channel the creativity of young people into street art and positive graffiti art projects. I think that a major concern of the Green Party when we first looked at this bill was the potential for it to dissuade, more positive artistic graffiti, of which there is plenty in it, and it can certainly enhance the character of towns and cities to have artistic graffiti, street art, like in the many laneways of Melbourne, like the work of Banksy in London and around the world. So it's really, really critical that we don't lump all forms of graffiti into the same basket and say that it's necessarily a bad thing. And I think it was a significant contribution that my colleague Holly Walker made on the Select Committee to ensure that there was a satisfactory definition of graffiti in this bill, which makes it clear that art with the consent of the property owner is not graffiti for the purposes of this bill. And removing the clauses that exempted council contractors from civil liability if they cause damage while removing the graffiti. There were a number of positive amendments made to the bill during the Select Committee process and as it went through the House, which allowed us to fully support this bill today. So, as previous speakers have noted, tagging can be quite a negative element within society, and it can lead to something which is known as the broken windows effect. So we've noted that in urban areas where there are broken windows or are not repaired in sufficient time, or there are ugly scrawls on pieces of property which clearly aren't street art, that contributes to a negative feeling in the area, that it tends to undermine a sense of community cohesion and can in fact lead to spiraling problems, social problems, whether they be further vandalism, other sorts of crime and violence. I mean, basically, we want our towns and cities to be places where everybody feels welcome. And obviously, tagging is not a form of street art. It's not something that makes people feel welcome. And if it can't be cleaned up quickly, then it can lead to a sense that this place is not looked after, it's not a place where people are welcome, and it can lead to further antisocial behavior. And as I understand it, tagging is a particular problem in the Hutt, and it has some of the highest rates within the country. And it tends to proliferate swiftly if it isn't removed. But the Hutt Council has been very proactive in removing it. And they have a dedicated team and a program which we've heard has been working very, very well. And we congratulate them for this. Now that the Council will have the legal right that this bill creates, they will be able to take their capacity and willingness to remove unwelcome graffiti or tagging on private property as well. This will be a very positive development for the community. The intent is not that the council should enter the private property and remove graffiti if the owner wants it, as I previously mentioned. And that was a very positive amendment that was made to the bill. Also that owners can respond within 10 working days, which may not seem particularly important, but it is an amendment from just 10 days, which allows greater time to take this option to say thanks but no thanks. And I think it's important that the council respect the property owner's right to have that response. I think I've heard some of the speakers here today describe taggers as being quite selfish, people who go out and vandalize private property. And look, that may be one way to characterize them, but I think that it's worth... it's worth thinking a little bit about why it is that some young people, or some people generally, don't feel like they're part of the community, and if there are better ways to deal with the sources of the problem rather than the symptom. Because ultimately, tagging is just a symptom of a group of people who do not feel like they're part of society, do not feel that they have any particular reason to respect the rights of others, and within their own peer group and social group, it's considered a sign of daring or bravery to go out and flout the law and to, put their tag on a building, on a piece of private property. And I think that there is incredible scope for community building projects that the Green Party would support that would enable young people who feel disenfranchised, who don't feel like they're part of society, to find ways for them, activities that don't result in this destructive vandalism of private property, and also the ongoing ensuing social impacts that I mentioned before. I think there's great potential there, and I think it would be sad if we wrote off people who are currently tagging as people who couldn't become constructive members of society and channel their passion, their bravery, their willingness to flout the law into something more successful. I wasn't suggesting that the Honourable Trevor Mallard said that, but I did hear other people say today in the House that other members said that characterized the people who are currently tagging as louts. And I just thought that was a bit unfortunate. I think it's really important that we consider that the society that we have now it doesn't give equal opportunity to everyone to participate. And I think it's just worth us reflecting on the fact that if we understand better the causes of why people behave in antisocial ways, that we might be able to deal with that behavior in a more constructive way that doesn't result in just continually having to paint over tags, which isn't really a very sustainable response if we're constantly having to go back and paint over tags, which are going to continue happening as long as people feel like that's the only way that they can go out and assert their mana. When Parliament last considered graffiti removal legislation, and that was the Manukau City Council Control of Graffiti Bill, the Green Party opposed it because it contained all manner of draconian provisions, including restricting young people from purchasing spray cans. We were in favor of provisions like those in this bill, which allow removal from private property, provided that civil liability clause was changed. And so while we are very happy to support this bill, I don't think it can be assumed that we would support similar legislation for other councils around the country. I think it's really important that we take a case-by-case basis and, make sure that the provisions that are made for councils to deal with unwelcome tagging on private property are actually proportionate to the particular problems that they're facing in each community. So, in summary, very happy to commend this bill to the House. I congratulate the member for bringing it before us. We congratulate the Hutt City Council for their proactive approach to ensure that there aren't these negative tagging, causing continuing spirals of antisocial behavior in the Hutt, and also for having proactive programs in place to try and channel the art and the creativity of young people in the streets. The Hutt may be a long way from the laneways of Melbourne, but there is always the potential to channel that creative energy into some pretty outstanding street art, even in the Hutt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member, Chris Farr.